Hello, friends. Welcome to the Existentialist. This is OJ. I'm an existential coach. The themes on this channel are mental health, self-improvement, and self-realization. In this series, In Conversations With, I have conversations with people about what they do, what drives them to being passionate in following their purpose and serving the lives of other people. Today, I have with me a fellow coach, Katie Baker, who's been an executive and life coach and facilitator for many decades now, and she has a rich, diverse experience. Apart from that, Katie's also a ICF certified coach from Integral Coaching Canada, as well as certified in crucial conversations, something that she feels passionate about and works a lot in. And first of all, good morning to you, Katie. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So Katie and I met during a training session that we were delivering together. She was the primary facilitator, and it was a treat to watch her be very improvising every time, saying something different, interesting stories, engaging people in. So it was lovely working with you, and that gave me a sense of your work and your style. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what makes you a coach that you are?
Sure. Thanks, OJ. By the way, it was a pleasure working with you as well, and it's been nice getting to know you, and now we have this nice working relationship. So that was lovely. And thanks for inviting me here today. So, when I think about my journey as a coach and sort of what has brought me to this place, and I think the journey that any coach takes is quite varied. I sort of stumbled upon it, if I'm going to be honest. I had a training and development background, so I was really, in the trenches in my early career, working with people on skill development, and very quickly got into the human side of things. Wanted to work with people who were feeling as though they had the potential to be something more, whether that was a different job or whether that was to just stay in the field they were in, but to become more effective. And that really caught my interest because I think that journey for people is a fascinating one, especially for a coach or for a trainer or anybody who works in this kind of field, right? So it started sort of developing in me as a trainer that there was deeper work to be done. And that it also, it wasn't just about teaching somebody a new sort of skill, right? It wasn't just about getting better or more efficient or more effective at something. That there were these bigger questions, these bigger, I would say, human questions, right? Around why am I even here? What am I even doing in this job? I found that the more conversations that I started having with people, those questions, those bigger questions came up. And I thought that was really interesting. And, they brought those questions forward with a real genuine interest to know the answers. And, it's not that a coach has those answers for you. I learned that pretty quickly. But what a coach is able to do is sort of kind of come and stand beside you while you ask those questions and help you articulate the question clearly so that you can get an idea of what's ahead of you in that journey. So, getting people to articulate, people saying, I just feel like I could be doing so much better or different, or that I have a different calling, or that I'm more than this. And really sitting down with people and going, okay, so tell me about what more looks like, right? Like, what is more? What is better for you? What is your calling? What do you think your potential here is about? And working with people to articulate that, and then sort of saying, well, okay, what's missing? Like, sort of, if that's where you want to get to, are there things standing in your way? And if there are, let's identify them and work on removing them. Or, what do you think needs to happen? Or what are some small changes that you can make in your life today that will start you on that journey one step at a time? And as soon as I started having those conversations, everything changed for me. I guess I stumbled into my purpose, right? I started realizing my potential to kind of say, wow, like being on this journey with people and acting as a guide or as a walking partner, whatever kind of analogy you want to use, set something in me completely on fire. And so coaching is more what I started to do, like you say, decades ago. So, you know, I think the coach that I've become is really interested in helping people remember. And I use that word very deliberately because I believe that, you know, as babies, we're sort of born and we're sort of this pure energy form, right? And we come in and everything's possible and everything is present. Everything you need is there. And I think that over time, as we take that, right, we take that little spark of perfection and it goes through our systems, our school systems, our family systems, all of that. I think that we lose that shine, or we lose the intensity of that spark. And so when I meet people in their adulthood, whether they're 20 or 60, I think there's a notion of kind of taking a pause in life and sort of just remembering back and saying, okay, actually, I do remember that I'm perfect. I do remember that I have the potential, that the possibility is within me. And what does that look like and mean? So getting people to remember that about themselves is, you know, it's sacred work. And I think that is what drives me as a coach, is to sort of help people remember that about themselves, right? And then explore that. Once you remember it and you go, oh yeah, that's right.
Right.
You know, and then kind of go, okay, so now that you've remembered that, now what, you know, what does that all look like? Yeah, right. I would say that's my sort of abbreviated story of my journey as a coach.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's really refreshing to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing. And when you say you help people remember, it reminds me of kind of bringing alive the inner child in people. And it's interesting how your work transitioned from doing training to focusing on something more fundamental and almost existential in nature. And it's great that you bring this up over here as well. Really ties in well with the theme of the channel. So one thing I was curious about is executive coaching, how that differs from, let's say, coaching another individual, the unique challenges that might come up with in terms of the clients and their challenges, and the dynamic of it. How does that work?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I think for any coach who works with corporate clients, you know, first of all, making that decision to exist within that culture is an interesting one, right? It presents all kinds of different challenges, right? Than sort of being a coach to someone who's just more on life's generic journey. So when you go into a corporation and start with people in that organization, you know, whether it's leaders who are just beginning or the seasoned, you know, executive, I find that it's an interesting challenge because there's sort of now I don't subscribe to this, but this is what you encounter, right? You've got the person in the corporate setting, and they often come to you with things like, I want to be a better leader. I want to be better at, you know, I don't know, assigning tasks, right? I want to be more efficient in how I manage my work. So they come to you with these sort of nut and bolt type issues that they want coaching on. And I remember early in my career sitting across from these people and going, well, yeah, we could do that. Sure. Knowing full well that as those conversations open up, right, and I start asking some intuitive, you know, hey, like, let's explore a little bit type of questions. What those executives do is, you know, as they reflect on those more soul searching questions about, what, hey, you're 60 and you're about to leave your job. You've only got 5 years left. And you talk about wanting to become a better leader. Let's change that question a little bit and sort of say, imagine that it's your retirement party and you're standing at the podium and you're looking at the people that you've affected over your career. What kind of legacy do you want to have behind you when people think about you? What is it that you want them to remember about you? And it's probably not going to be how efficient you manage the bidding process.
Right.
It's probably not going to be that. It's probably going to be that more human side. It's probably going to be that you cared about your people when they were facing difficult times and needed some compassion and some empathy from their workplace. Or they'll remember you as being someone who didn't sweat the small stuff and encouraged people even when they fell down. So in my journey as a coach, what I've learned about executives and about leaders and corporate clients in general is that they're just people, and the coaching really isn't that different. So at the end of the day, I think when the moment of truth comes and you sit down across from someone and you look into their eyes, or maybe you reach out and you touch their hand, or you establish that connection that, this isn't going to be a fancy corporate conversation. It's going to be a conversation between two human beings, and we're going to be playful and we're going to be exploring what it is that matters to you. And if that happens to be in the context of your work and the people that you lead and the job that you do, then of course that makes sense. But most of my executive clients, when they walk away from our coaching relationship, it's often in thanks of the remembering piece, right? Again, it's
okay.
Yeah, right. I'm glad, people will say things to me, weird things like, you reintroduced me to myself, or you helped me remember what used to be really important to me. And I think I lost some of that in the churn of the corporate machine. So, I have colleagues, it's interesting. I have colleagues who will say, why do you work in that world? Like, why do you go corporate? Why do you bother with those people? And I've always sort of been a bit of a warrior in that I believe that we can often affect the greatest change when we sort of climb in to the I guess I call it the belly of the beast, right? Like the corporate model, the capitalist model, in my opinion, is broken. We don't treat people with the dignity and compassion and empathy that human beings deserve in some corporate settings. We're focused on the wrong things. We're focused on profit. We're focused on productivity. And I think that really is something to be desired when it comes to the human connection. So, the corporate side of my business is a business that I take very seriously. And I think that a great change can be brought about by just connecting people back to their hearts in that setting.
Connecting people back to their hearts. And what I also found really interesting is that ultimately the conversations that you have with executives are not all that different. And it does eventually go into what matters and really the deep questions rather than the more tactical questions. So that kind of made me ask you, how do you see the balance between being material and being spiritual, or being a good corporate person versus being a good human being? And how does one achieve that balance?
Oh, it's $1 million question. So, I think I'm going to try and answer that. The difference between being a good corporate citizen and being a good human being, is that the gist of your question?
Yeah. I remember we had this conversation about two different kinds of people. One being extremely uh, tuned in terms of the materialistic world, and then there being some very spiritually, intuitively driven people. So, how do you marry the two? How would there be a best of both worlds?
Oh my, that's an interesting question. I think that, I think we need to reconcile. I think every human being needs to reconcile this notion of, being on this plane, being on the planet at this time. We've all been born into this life. And it's an interesting dynamic, actually. I'm glad that you brought this question up. I've been thinking about this lately, actually. This notion of, here we are, we're sort of plunked down, aren't we? Right. And we've got things that we need to take care of as we grow up, right? We've got to find a place to live. We've got to get some food. We've got to look after these children, whatever our situation is as adults. But we also have the spiritual part of ourselves, and there's a journey where we're also here for a reason on that front as well. And how to reconcile the two? I think that the danger, if I could talk about the danger first, which kind of alludes back to the answer that I think I just gave and we talked about, was the danger is to lose sight of the two pieces, right? So you disconnect from the spiritual completely. You find yourself toiling away in the material, right? Getting the food, getting the shelter, and then it gets weird, right? It doesn't just become about food and shelter and clothing. It becomes about recognition, and it becomes about ego, and it becomes about notoriety, right? And all that sexy stuff that as humans we can get very consumed with. And I've been there. I think it's a very human thing, right? We have bodies that are made out of carbon, right? Like we are of the earth to a certain degree. So I think that perception is a natural one. And it's interesting because, God, this sounds like a commercial for coaching, and I don't mean it to be, but again, having someone in your life that remembers that connection to the spiritual and can remind us, like, hey, like, wait a second, the material is not all of it. In fact, it's quite a small part of why we're here. And there's more. There's a bigger question being asked. There's, I think I may have told this to you. I very much am visual. I think in pictures and colors and tapestries and texture. And when I began this work, the connection to the spirit was, for me, very visual. And I got this sense of like people carrying in their chests like this glowing sort of like orb, right? Almost like E.T., right? Remember E.T.'s heart?
Yeah.
How it sort of pulsated and glowed out of his chest, right?
Right.
I guess I'm a child of the 80s or the 70s, so I make reference to E.T. But I think that is that part of us that is connected, and reconciling the material and the spiritual is remembering that glow, that ember that we carry inside of us. So I would say that whether you find that connection, whether you're reminded of that connection through a friend or your mom or a coach or somebody that you just meet on the street that somehow connects you back, I think that that is a real gift. And I think, if I'm going to be sort of existential for a moment, I think that if I could guess at a purpose for why we're here, I do believe that it's to remember that and to engage that part of who we are, that spiritual part, that part that needs more than just Maslow's hierarchy of shelter and food and clothing. That there's so much more to that, and to be fully realized, which is kind of a term that it's like being woke. I really don't care for those terms all that much. They're not really of my generation, those terms. But I guess that would be the word that you would use, would be to wake up, right? And I think that an unrealized life or a life sort of spent asleep, where all that's important is that bottom row of Maslow's hierarchy,
Yeah.
is unfortunate. So, I think that we all work that out through our lives in some way or another. We could say maybe that we're all working that out, right, every day.
Right.
So when I talk to my clients, especially people who maybe come to me out of curiosity and they're like, I don't really know what coaching is about. I kind of don't believe in that stuff. I'm not into the spiritual thing. I'm not into energy. I'm a very left brain, factual, scientific guy. Get a
Right.
lot of clients like that. And I don't think that you can help me. So yeah, but my boss sent me here and he thinks that I need some coaching. So here we are, right? I get a lot of those conversations,
Yeah.
and
Definitely
it's not, yeah, right. I think we all do. And I don't see that as being a challenge to my coaching practice at all. I think that that's someone showing up very genuinely, kind of going, I'm really not sure what this is about. So, and I don't say to those people, oh, I'm going to connect you back to your spiritual self, right? They would run out the door. But it's really about, and I think this is the core of the coaching practice. It's about, compassionately listening to that person and then asking them a question, right? And it's like the $1 million question, what's it going to be, right? And sometimes it's as simple as saying, yeah, okay, I hear what you're saying. So let me just give you something to think about. Go away for a few days. And then if you feel the pull to come back and talk somewhere, we can. And whatever that question's going to be, but it's going to be a question that's very specifically targeted at the part of us that covers up that warm, glowing light, right? Because I think that person kind of looks down and kind of can't see what's going on there. So that's a really long answer to your question.
Yeah, no, but a beautiful one at that. Really, thank you so much for that answer. Really touched upon a lot of things. And I like the theme that we have kind of built for today, which has been about, you know, how to sort of get clients to connect to their spiritual side, their higher self, remembering their true nature. And so I just want to finish with this question. In this process of a coach facilitating a client um, through this process, what according to you makes a good client? You mentioned showing up, and also what according to you makes a good coach in this process?
Wow. So what makes a good client and what makes a good coach? Ooh, cool questions. I think I'll start with the client. So yeah, I'm just, that's a tough one for me. And it's funny that the people in my life who know me best, I think what drives them crazy about who I am is that the coaching, whatever you want to call it, lens or approach, is never switched off for me. It's right. It's not something that I don't like kind of put my card in the thing in the morning and start my job and become the coach and then card out at 5 o'clock. Sometimes I wish it was that easy. So I think for me, anybody's a client, right? I see people on the street and I see the light in them. I see the beauty in them. I see the potential in them. So, I think that anyone who's kind of searching, I would say, is a client, somebody who's curious. And also maybe people who aren't curious or aware, but feel really stuck and don't know why. Some people in my life would say that I'd actually attract people like that to me, right? People who are just like, yeah, you know what I mean, right? And maybe all sort of like coaches, healers, whoever may share this, that we attract people who are searching. So, but in terms of having somebody sit down with you in the journey, I think that there needs to be a certain amount of curiosity. which to me is really the starting point. I don't think it's about having the answers. And I get clients who will show up for their first day of coaching going, I didn't know what to prepare. Like, I don't have anything ready. You didn't send me anything. So I didn't get the PowerPoint. And I'm like, no, it's not about that. You just need to be here and be mildly curious about where this journey is going to take us. So I would say that those are the people who will have the most success in a coaching dialogue. And I don't think it's about hard work. I think maybe sometimes it's about hard work, but I don't think it's always about hard work. I think, it can be, a coaching session can last 5 minutes and just have a really powerful question that you kind of walk away from and go, whoa, oh, and then it triggers all kinds of things, right? I mean, the universe is interesting that way, that sometimes, it's the butterfly, right? The butterfly beats its wing and crazy things happen. I think those moments, those powerful questions, can trigger a whole series of events that people had no idea were about to happen. So I think that curiosity as a client showing up is probably key to there being a productive conversation. And then the coach. I've met really great coaches, and I've met folks that shouldn't be coaching at all. So, when I think about what sets those two groups of people apart, I would definitely mention that, a lot of us, and I don't know if this was your experience, OJ, when I was younger and kind of learning about coaching and exploring it as something that I might be good at or interested in, I did have that false notion that the coach had to have the answer. Right. Because I thought about, I thought about coaches who, coaches of hockey teams or swimming coaches or football coaches who would tell people what to do. And that's what it was all about. Right. And I thought maybe that's what coaching was about. And, on day one of my certification, very quickly realized that wasn't going to be the case at all, which was a great relief to me, because I'm not somebody that has a lot of answers. I'm searching just like everybody else does. So I learned really quickly that being an effective coach is having the ability to listen fully, having compassion so that you can hold space for people as they try and have compassion for themselves. So when people uncover the hard parts of themselves, or the parts that they're not proud of, or the smaller parts of themselves, or the younger parts of themselves that aren't looking at the world through the right lens, there's a need for real compassion in those moments. So being someone who can hold that for other people, I think is an important part of being an effective coach. And then, I hate to beat this to the ground, but I can't say it enough, that I think that the magic of a good coach is the ability to ask the question. That, I think, and this is going to sound corny, but I think it's about being able to ask the question that our own hearts and souls and spirits are dying to ask, are dying to have the answer to, right? So just positioning that question in a way that the person feels safe enough to go inside and actually look around a bit and try and remember and try and think and try and explore and connect into their spirit and go there, I think is what makes a powerful coach. And then, coming back and saying, hey, yeah, this is where I went with that question you asked me. What a crazy question that was. This is what it brought in. And then being able to kind of be, the kid in the sandbox with your friend and going, oh, okay, well, let's see what's come up. What treasures have we been presented with, and what could they mean, right? And what's next? And what questions did that question bring up? And let's get curious and playful, and let's go follow those. Yeah. Which is why it's a journey. Some of my coaching clients I meet once, and then I've got other clients that I've been working with for, 5 or 6 years, because that curiosity just continues to lead to new curiosities about who they are and their potential. So yeah, I would say that, it's a hard one to articulate, but in my experience and in my approach to coaching, I would say that those are probably the ingredients of an effective coach.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for an amazing insight. Just when you mentioned the sign of not a good coach is giving the answers or feeling compelled to give the answers. That immediately struck a chord with me, and that tends to be a struggle with a lot of coaches who may feel obligated to give answers, or clients that demand an answer from a coach. And the hallmark of a good coach is to ask those questions which make you go into the rabbit hole. And I guess there's a quote that I'm paraphrasing. A well-formed question is sometimes the answer.
Ooh, nice. Ooh, I haven't heard that. That's a good one. Well, I think what the well-formed question allows us to do, and I think this is maybe the last thing I would say, because I think this is important as well. As that person is coming back and going, wow, this is what the question brought up. I think a good coach is also able to sort of, I often imagine it being a mirror, right, that you look into. And there's certain parts of yourself that you can't see, right? So I think that the coach kind of can take that mirror and sort of show you different views of yourself through different lenses to sort of say, hey, yes, what you've just said is very interesting. And then let me show you something else that's sort of back here that you might not be able to see. Let me tell you what I see here. Let me show you it from this angle. So I think that can be really helpful to people to gain those additional insights, because we can only see what we can see, right, as people. So having somebody along, and that doesn't need to be a coach, right? That can be a friend, it can be a lover, it can be your child.
Sure.
Having somebody in your life, right, who's brave enough to say to you, okay, sure, and here are some other ways of potentially interpreting this situation that would be good for you to consider before you make a decision or take an action. So I think that's a really important part of being an effective coach as well. So I think that sort of completes my answer, is that ability to ask the question, not come forward with answers, but to let the person being coached find them themselves, and then being able to reflect back to some people, some places that they may not be able to see quite clearly about themselves.
And I also get the sense from when I hear you of the coach being sitting side by side to the client and kind of looking at things together and taking that journey together, rather than standing across and directing.
Well, I mean, if you and I sit across a table from each other, or we stand face to face, I'm seeing you and you're seeing me. And you're right. If you're sitting at a table and I pull a chair up beside you, you and I are looking at the same vista, aren't we? So I'm trying to see the world through your eyes a little bit more than just sitting across from you and telling you what I see. So I think there is, and it's the journey aspect that I think is important. I heard a wonderful analogy once, and I've always kept it in my mind because I think it's powerful. And that is sort of a person out in a field, big field, kind of stretches on forever in either direction beside you. But in front of you, maybe 100, 200 feet in front of you is just a wall. And that wall is it's a forest, right? It's trees. And again, that stretches on as far as the eye can see from horizon to horizon. And you need to keep going, right? You can't stay in the field forever. You can't turn back, right? If you think about life as being a journey. So the forest is in front of you. And it's, as you get closer, you realize this is a serious forest, right? It's the trees are old, they're tall, and it's not easily traversed. It's dark, and there's vines and brambles, and it's not easy to get into. And I think that for a lot of us, we stand in front of that daunting forest, and we sort of look up at the trees, and goodness, is there a shortcut? And there's not, of course.
Right.
And you imagine that you've arrived at the forest and it's your first time, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do, and you feel like sort of a gentle hand on your shoulder, and you kind of look, and there's a person standing beside you, and the person's like, yeah, it's a big forest. And you're like, yeah. Have you got a plan? Well, not really. I'm trying to figure one out. And you say, well, you know what? I've been through the forest. I've helped people get through the forest before. I've got a bag here, and I've actually packed it for you. And in this bag, there's a map, and there's some water, and there's some things to make a fire, and there's some things to keep us warm, and there's a bit of food. So what do you say we try this together? And I give that story to the people who who find me and are not sure about what we're about to do or whether they want to go on this journey. And that analogy helps people. I think it helps people go, yeah, this life isn't easy and you do have to go through it. And wouldn't it be easy to have somebody, or wouldn't it be better to have somebody with you who may not have all of the answers, but has got a few things in the pack and has a pretty good idea of where we're going. So, I like that. I like that notion of the coach as being beside you and being attuned into your needs and what it is that you're searching for.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. It's really gone well, I think. Thank you so much for all the amazing insights that you've shared.
Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Sorry?
Thank you for inviting me today.
Oh yeah. It's really been amazing having you. I was just wondering, would you be okay to share your email or some way of if somebody wanted to get in contact with you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
I can give my email address. I can give my website, although my website's not a very busy place. But do you have my work email, the Gmail one?
Yeah, I'll be happy to share it in the description. Perfect. If anybody wanted to get in touch with you.
Yeah, of course.
If they wanted to work with you personally or get some more insights. Well, I certainly believe this has been a wonderful session, very insightful for me. And hopefully I have the opportunity of, and we get to collaborate again in.
Yeah, I hope so.
Another way.
I'm always keeping my eyes open.
Yeah. Lovely. Yeah. Well, thank you once again, and thank you all who's made it so far and watching this. I hope it's been as rewarding for you as it has been for me.
It's been wonderful. It's been wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.